I just completed the Claws of Awaji DLC from Assassin's Creed Shadows, and in today's video I'm going to be telling you whether it's actually worth your time. Thanks to Ubisoft for the early release copy as always, and let's just jump straight on in. Now I'm going to treat this like I do all my reviews where we look at each element of the game one by one, and I feel like it makes sense to start with the story, which will include some minor DLC spoilers and some from the main game too. Obviously, if you don't want any surprises, do skip ahead to the relevant timestamp, but if not, keep on watching. Now, a lot of the theme of Shadows was all about what happened to Naoi's mother, and Claws of Awaji seeks to give us these answers. The story opens up with a friend of Hattori Hanzo telling us that there is a puppet show, yes, a puppet show, which weirdly may include some details about the location of Naoi's mum, so off we go to watch this puppet show, which of course takes place on the island of Awaji. The puppet show was actually really cool. As the story is being told, we get to act it out in a cool 2D version of the game, similar to gameplay like in AC Chronicles. This was an absolutely awesome opener for the story, and I was grinning ear to ear when this was taking place. It just sets up everything so nicely and is a really nice piece of content. So from there we follow the clues, and whilst this next sentence is a bit of a spoiler, it does happen in the first 20 minutes of the game, so I think it's okay to tell you now. We do find our mum, called Tsuyu, who is locked up in a castle. We then head off to rescue her, which is unfortunately a trap, which then sets up the aim for the whole DLC, introducing our objective of finding the third piece of regalia, the other two of which we gathered in the main story, and defeating the tyrant, known as Kimura Yukari, and her three generals who have their grip upon the island. From then on, it's a series of tasks to take out her three generals before culminating in one final showdown. Now that's as much story detail as I want to give you without spoiling anything too major, and overall, I actually really enjoyed the story. To start, Yukari and her three generals, known as the Sanzoku Ippa, actually have way more personality than the Shinbakufu or the Onro from the main game. We get a decent amount of time to learn about them and their ambitions, which makes eventually taking them out so damn satisfying. The relationship between Naoi and her mother, I would say, is delivered just fine. Because Naoi never really knew her mother, and Tsuyu is an aging legendary shinobi, the whole theme of the story is about her taking on this mothership role, with Tsuyu also trying to accept that she isn't the warrior she once was, and that Naoi isn't a little girl, and she can pick up the mantle where Tsuyu cannot. I kind of feel their relationship wasn't really explored enough. Between rushing off and completing objectives, other than the opening and ending, we don't really see the two of them interact a lot, although I thought the ending was done well and we had some rather gushy moments. Yasuke, I have to say, unlike the main story, definitely takes a backseat in this game. Whilst he does take on two of the four bosses, this story isn't really his, and he feels more like a side character in this DLC. I will say, a lot of the big scenes of the game do have Yasuke and Naoi interacting and working together, which is great, but this is Naoi's story. It does make me wonder, as all of the Assassin's Creed RPGs have 2 DLCs or more, whether there will be a second Shadows DLC, and whether this one will focus on Yasuke. There are some nice fun twists and turns throughout, just keeping you focused, some really emotional moments, the boss characters are all done really well, and there are some surprises in this DLC from main game characters who maybe you didn't get a conclusion about, which makes it feel more like an extension of your original experience, rather than just an add-on that you don't have to take part in. I'll add too, the cutscenes look fantastic. They already looked great in the main game, and the same level of detail has gone into this DLC too, perhaps even more so. The facial animations, of which I was a little negative about before, dare I say they've improved these just a little. I think I'd need to look at these side by side to really be sure, but you can tell they really took their time creating these cutscenes, offering some beautiful, detailed landscapes and locations whilst our story is taking place. The whole narrative took me around 10 to 12 hours to finish, which I think is decent enough for a DLC, and I would say while some of the content feels a little bloated, the main story definitely doesn't. Overall, I enjoyed the Claws of Awaji DLC story. It didn't blow me away, but it's just as on par with its main counterpart, but it's the content here which is the big game changer, which we'll talk about now. Now, your main objective here is to take out these 3 generals, the Sanzoku Ippa, and the fun thing with Claws of Awaji is that each of them have their own style of influence across the island. You've got Tameji, a big brute and our boss's main captain who has a ton of roadblocks and camps scattered throughout. There's Nowaki, a stealth master who lays loads of ambushes and traps to heed your exploration. And then you've got the spy master, I won't give their name away, who whenever you use your spies to find an objective, it makes that area glow red and enemies will be there in greater presence. This is a cool mechanic, actually adding consequences to using your spy network. And as you take these guys out, which you can do in any order, that influence on the world will disappear, really showing you that you are making progress. I'd add here, whilst there is no particular boss you should take on first, I found that when completing an objective to get closer to these bosses, it would naturally lead you close to another part of someone's objective, so it actually flows quite well rather than just feeling like you're focusing on one boss at a time. The largest main objective is that Tameji has 16 captains scattered throughout the world, and you're highly encouraged to take them out before attempting to confront him in a boss battle. I did try to fight him after taking out just a handful of them, and very quickly realised that I stood no chance unless I took all of these guys out first. You do actually only have to take out 11 of the 16 captains before it states that Tameji is alone, which was a little strange, but as this was my last objective before the final arc of the game, I was quite pleased by this as taking out these captains was beginning to become quite repetitive and felt like a little bit of a tick boxing exercise. Now, the boss battles in Awaji are easily one of the major highlights of the game. There are only 3 of them, but they're actually really difficult, and I may be as bold to say that this is the hardest Assassin's Creed game that I've ever played. In fact, and I'm not ashamed to say this here, I actually had to turn my difficulty down. Most of my footage today you'll see me playing on normal mode, but after 3 hours, yes 3 hours of trying to kill Tameji, my patience wore thin and I did turn the difficulty down to story mode. This guy, and Kimura, can kill you with a single attack, and it actually felt reminiscent of a Souls-like game, which I think some people are going to absolutely love, but the more casual gamer may not have the patience for this. Whilst the battle against Tameji and Kimura are, other than being insanely difficult, pretty standard mechanics-wise, you just fight them in an enclosed space, the battle against Nowaki, the stealth master, is a really interesting piece of content. This is somewhat reminiscent of Metal Gear Solid in that you have to sneak through an area, listen to sounds and work out where Nowaki is to attack them, and of course, this masked figure has lured you into their den where tons of statues of them are scattered around. This was definitely one of my highlights of my playthrough, keeping me focused, alert, and above all, it actually felt pretty scary. The whole time you're searching for them and being attacked from all sides, this character Nowaki is teasing you and just saying some really horror movie type shit. Other main missions, and this type of content happened a couple of times, is where Naoi dons a disguise to sneak into an area and chat with those within it to obtain information or eventually get to her target. Whilst in some sense it's kinda boring, you are just walking around and talking to people, it does make the game feel more like Assassin's Creed, and it's a nice change of pace from the usual constant combat that I think some of the older fans are probably gonna really enjoy. One thing I did pick up from a couple YouTubers like The Hidden One and Andy Reloads is that they played a mission, as did I, when Yasuke is defending Naoi as she opens a gate. Now, this was cool, no doubt. It really aids the whole dual protagonist system and enforces the idea that they're working together. I played it, I enjoyed it, and then I thought, great, I'm going to look forward to their next joint mission, and then it never arrived. There was also an instance in the beginning where as Naoi is captured, you're then forced to play as Yasuke to break in and get her out. I love this sort of gameplay. It emphasises that partnership aspect, but again, this was something that only happened once. I do, however, really love the theme of we are the ones being hunted in Awaji. Aside the influences the 3 bosses have across the island, even strangers will just attack you out of nowhere, and it really feels like the entire world is against you compared to mainland Japan. Often, I found myself actually running and hiding away, rather than facing onslaughts of enemies literally every 2 minutes, and whilst in some ways it is a little bit of overkill, I really appreciate what Ubisoft did here. It adds a whole new dimension to the game and puts it in hard mode. Another positive is that a lot of these main missions do have alternate ways of completing them. When I had to break in as Yasuke, I was told I can either fight my way in as usual or find a hidden entrance, and another time I again could fight my way through or obtain a disguise to walk right past the guards. It makes some of the content feel more like the black box missions like we had in Unity and Syndicate, and whilst there aren't enough of these opportunities to wow me, it does show the time the game has had devoted to it and essentially just makes it feel more like Assassin's Creed. And other than your boss battles and a few select set pieces, the rest of your time will be spent completing smaller objectives to get to these bosses. This is done in the usual way, sneaking into encampments, assassinating the right people, aiding someone for information. It's more of what we've had from the main game, but mixed with the more dangerous world, it elevates it a little to make you take these objectives more seriously. With the side content, unfortunately, there isn't anything new added here. We have all the usual stuff you'd expect, finding temple relics, finding gear and resources, the Sima E, which is essentially the painting challenges, although in Awaji you'll paint stills instead of animals, completing the Kata and Kirikuji, although these won't offer any cool flashback scenes like in the main game, praying at shrines, and a few new parkour path challenges too. It's fine, but it is essentially all rehashes of the original game, and is really only there for you to level up. None of this is a negative, I enjoyed all of this at varying levels, but it would have been nice to at least have some type of new side content for you to sink your teeth into. Overall, the content in Claws of Awaji is actually pretty good. It's a standard enough premise, you kill some guys to get to some bigger guys, but because the world adapts to you as you play, you're constantly under threat and the boss battles again are insane, I found for the most part really enjoying myself. I would have liked maybe a couple new side elements and definitely some more missions where Naoi and Yasuke are completing objectives together, but there's enough here to establish itself away from the main game, making the content in Claws of Awaji personally, I think, worthy of your time. And Naoi's new weapon really helps with this enjoyment too. Now, there have been some updates and changes to our gameplay in Claws of Awaji, the biggest one of course being Naoi's new weapon, the bow staff. This is, without a doubt, easily the most fun weapon in the game. Not only does it add some new abilities, most of which are damage animations, although one ability will cause Naoi to have extra speed, damage and reach for 15 seconds, the stance system is the real game changer. On top of regular attacks, you can put Naoi into a low, middle or high stance with quick or heavy attacks, just adding an extra dimension to the combat. The low stance in particular was something I found myself using a lot, as it forces enemies to their feet for you to then take them out from above. And whilst you don't have to use the stance system, it's not like certain enemies can only take damage from one stance or another, which is a minor shame, the bow staff overall truly feels amazing. It is like you can feel every hit and it has some serious weight to it, and I probably spent 90% of my playthrough just running around with Naoi and her bow. I would say the stance system just shows what is possible if you take your time, and whilst I personally think Shadows has some of the best combat in the whole series, it also makes me wonder whether all of these games' weapons could have had the stance system implemented too. It would have taken from what I think is good combat to something great, and I'm not complaining here, but using the bow staff just sort of makes the other weapon types now feel a little bit boring. However, Yasuke, despite not getting a new weapon like Naoi, did get some extra weapon abilities too. The Naginata has a spinning attack, where Yasuke will walk and twirl the Naginata around. The Katana has a new attack which you charge up, damaging and throwing enemies back. The bow has a new widespread attack, which I didn't really use very much to be honest, it isn't that powerful, and the Teppo is a strange one where Yasuke essentially straps a friggin' firework to it, making it a little bit like a flamethrower. I didn't really use these too much, as like I said, I mostly played as Naoi except for a couple 4 segments and boss battles, but the one I did use a lot was the new Kanabo ability, in which Yasuke will yeet that giant stick into somebody's face, causing them to fall down so you can do a ground attack. I found this one was really great in boss battles for some easy damage, as well as the spinning Naginata move, so worth spanning these abilities if, like me, you find yourself struggling. Now, in terms of new mechanics, that is it. There isn't any changes to parkour and stealth, but I think the big thing to take away from the Claws of Awaji, other than the new bow staff and Yasuke weapon abilities, is just how difficult the damn combat is. There was one moment in the game where I was ambushed and I lost all my health in literally a split second. I love this because the people who are likely to play the Claws of Awaji are going to be bigger fans of the base game. They'll already, you'd think, have mastered all of the game's combat, but the difficulty really has ramped up, giving you the challenge you've potentially been craving. In the final boss battle, and I can't really believe I'm admitting this, I actually died once in story mode. It is that difficult. Now, one thing that hasn't really fallen into the story, missions and gameplay is the world of Awaji itself. It's very similar to the mainland, but it definitely does have some notable differences. Awaji is roughly the size of 2 regions of Japan, filled with coastlines and mountains, everything you'd expect, but I'd say the big difference is the forests themselves. Awaji is full of these really cool windy trees, almost a little like you'd imagine a scary forest in a fairy tale would be, and it suits the setting really well. In general, the whole tone of this game is a bit creepier than the main game. There are whispers in the wind, leaves blowing in your path, creatures scurrying through the water. It suits the darker story and the boss Nowaki really well. I also noticed too that Awaji seems to have a lot of higher leaps of faith, which I really like. The only small bug I noticed though, and hopefully this won't happen for you, is that upon sinking on these points for the first time, I then wasn't able to do this again, which is a shame, because I wanted to use a sinking/leap of faith clip at the beginning of this video with no text. To truly conclude though, I am gently impressed with the Claws of Awaji DLC. The story is pretty decent, the characters are interesting, the bow staff is the new #1 asset, and it introduces some great boss fights and some cool new mechanics, but it does also offer a lot of the same bloat from the main game. I got around 15 to 20 hours worth of playtime on Awaji, and there were still some objectives for me to complete, which I think is a decent amount of time. Hell, it's almost the same length as Mirage. If you're after some more Shadows content with a twist, I think you're gonna really like it. It's easily some of the most challenging Assassin's Creed content ever, it's a solid DLC, and I can quite happily recommend that you do go out and give it your time. And if you'd like to know where I ranked Assassin's Creed Shadows amongst the other 14 mainline games, that video is on screen now. Do let me know whether you're also a fan of the DLC in the comments below, subscribe for more, and I will catch you legends in the next one. Until then.